Hello.
How are we all doing?
Oh, good.
We're,
Groovy.
We're
Thank you.
doing good. Thank you.
yeah, here we are, number six already. Going to do a little bit of review of what we're looking at. We looked at number one, just opening up and looking to see that we're coming into the context and looking at the whole idea that we're coming in and we know we're coming in with preceptions that we've been all programmed with in a certain way of thinking, and that what we're going to try to do like is get into a creative mode. Who are we in the face of these perceptions? How are we looking at the world? And so we looked at the world from the standpoint that we really are in a context that was designed as war powers. And there's a concerted, not just a plan, but a design and a formula, mathematics. They've figured us out so completely that they know that they know what we're going to do before we know what we're going to do. They know us better than we know ourselves. So what we're looking at in the silent weapons for quiet wars is the overlay. In today's discussion, we now understand the overlay. We understand the formula. We understand that we've actually been designed to think the way that we're thinking, and that we've been looked at denaturalization. In my mind, natural is who we really are. Denaturalization is taking us into that corporate structure, into the foundation of war powers and that whole corporate mechanism of illusion. It's an illusion. It's an illusion of thinking that through our speaking and through our actions and through our frequencies, because we've been designed that way, we literally manifest into the world. And so we looking at, if we change our focus, we change our vocabulary, we change our energetic, because we're projecting something different. We have a different way of looking at things. We see that the Constitution says that there's war powers. And we look out here and we still see the president laying executive orders. So the first executive order, we look back at Lincoln's time when this whole corporate structure came in 1871, and the Reconstruction after the Civil War, and how this whole illusion and the whole war powers was created. Now think about it.
You went
We have
offline. We missed a lot. It went to low bandwidth and then disconnected and
No,
brought back in.
it
So
was
a lot
fine
of
for
what you've
me.
been saying, maybe
Oh, and
a
it was
half,
so brilliant.
a minute and a
It,
half
it,
about.
I heard,
It might be,
Barbara,
yeah,
I
it
think
might have been your
you.
connection.
Yeah, it was fine for me. I
I
didn't miss
heard it
anything.
perfect. I heard it okay.
You dropped out. I don't really
Yeah,
know.
I heard everything. It sounded fine. Great, in fact.
Yeah,
So,
I heard everything
so
too.
basically what we looked at, and we looked from a historical standpoint and the history of it. And so we look out now and we see, based in that history, we see evidence that it's still going on. The war powers is still going on. We saw the insurrection, that declaration that Trump actually made, that is coming forward. And we see the very first executive order that brought this war powers as a conquest, as the illusion of the reality of our nation. And we see that happening out here in the world, the war powers. How do we see that it's the same thing? Because Abraham Lincoln's executive order number 100 was the first order under the war powers, Reconstruction. And we still see executive orders being issued today. So the sequence of executive orders that is literally war powers is still happening today. And we saw after the Insurrection Act that Trump declared, we saw him say, okay, now we're going to have a continuity of government. Why? Because they're rebuilding the republic. We're in a huge transition, that our understanding of the transition of where we came from in war powers and the transition that's occurring back from war powers is like no other time. And even with all the history that we're bringing forward, we're in a time when our energy and our understanding of this is very, very important. How do we express this? I was looking at a video, and I'll drop you the link to the video. I'll probably give it to Lewis so he can send it out to you in an email. And I've got another document I'm going to tell you about. But so I've somewhere in here I found I watched a video, and I thought so much of it. I want to drop you some tidbits from that video and I'll drop you the link to the video because it is so right on point from where we are right now. I got disheveled looking for the link. Where is it? I've got some things to share with you about how our frequency, because that's where we really started looking at how is our frequency important at this time? How do we express and articulate not only on paper, but realize that our frequency at this time of the transition is the critical factor in moving forward and moving not even back to the historical momentum, but really creating the new earth, really building the new earth as the transitions are occurring. Oh, here it is. And I'll drop you a link to this video. It's over an hour long, but I'm just going to make some mentions of some things in here that I thought. Your planet is in the process of choosing between timelines that cannot remain braided much longer. And while human minds argue about names and politics and which side is using which story to injure the other, the deeper function of the moment is to separate those who are ready to live inside truth. Now, where do we find it? Where are we looking at truth? Where's the truth expressed? It's expressed in affidavits. And ready to separate those who live inside truth from those who still require a comfortable illusion. It's not a punishment. When vocabulary changes, the mind has new tools. And when the mind has new tools, it can build new questions. And when questions become unavoidable, the guardians of secrecy must either answer or lose credibility. That's why this is just the beginning. The controlled release is often an attempt to preserve credibility, yet it also creates the very condition that destroys false credibility. Over time, because the public learns to ask, it becomes harder to stop them asking. Those who remain invested in control study your populations in ways no studies. One studies weather patterns, and they release information when they believe it will split your attention into manageable lanes. Now, doesn't this sound like this is happening right now? This is happening in our culture and happening in our world. And we're looking at the war powers and laying the silent weapons for quiet wars. This is today's information. We could have looked at it in history and had it say the same thing. It's designed to split. They call it the narrative, splitting one from the other. Those who remain invested in control study your population the way one studies weather patterns, and they release information when they believe it will split your attention into manageable lanes. The lane of outrage, the lane of denial, the lane of partisan conflict, the lane of spectacle, the lane of nothing will ever change. Nothing will ever change. The first breach is not the end, it's the permission slip for further breaches. And so, my dear brothers and sisters, we come to the most critical point of the first section, and that is the release is happening now because the old strategy of infinite delay is no longer functional. When the sky fills with clouds, you know rain is coming. When the sun sets, you know night will fall. When the first light appears, you know dawn will break. And this is the first light. We are the first light. We are the white water on the front edge of the wave of change. It was built as a maze with corridors and loops, with doors that lead to another door, with many rooms that appear important, while the real control mechanisms are hidden behind ordinary labels, so that you are receiving in the structure of the disclosure, and the structure itself is part of the message. First, understand that these releases are often engineered to arrive as volume rather than as clarity, because clarity creates unity and unity creates action, while volume can create argument, fatigue, and distraction in a way that the same disclosures can be used to produce opposite outcomes depending on how it's shaped. So here we are shaping our perspective, shaping our lives, looking at not only the how law was and the war powers it was, but we're looking at how did the treaties now say that we have this path. We're shaping this path of clarity into peace. And how do we walk there? How do we think there? You're meant to become fascinated with individual artifacts while missing the repeat patterns. So we're starting to step back now from the rationalization, the analyzing what we've got here, analyzing pictures and the documents and the heavy war powers, and step back into the context. We are still in that context. We're in such a volatile context of change right now that who we are and how we hold our frequency with this new information, with these new the questions that we really can ask now, that we open up that new earth for not only us, but for the frequency to resonate out into the world. Comments, questions, were you with the reading this week? I'll drop the link to the whole video if you'd like to see it. I downloaded the transcript because I want to just really embody it. Yeah, Selma.
Just before you were able to join us, Marcia, a couple of people were commenting about how challenging the reading was, especially that one document that's, I don't know, 125 pages or whatever and stuff. And when you were speaking about frequency and also for me resonance, I was thinking that, and you talked also, you were quoting something about clarity versus so many words. I'll call it obfuscation sometimes. I just felt it was a great illustration of what we were experiencing, because I love reading the documents that are simple. Even the font is easy to read, and it's clear in terms of what we're focusing on, like the laws of universal laws. And then you go into those stupid documents, like one of the treaty documents is 15 pages, of which there's only 5 pages of actual content, and the rest is all these, unnecessary information. So I just felt it was illustrating what you were speaking about.
Yeah, it's interesting how these messages come in to really bring, because what I was really realizing today is we're starting to step back from the analytic, from that confusion, from the division of our minds from these real laws, and we've looked at now how are they engaged, how are they see that all that confusion and the unthinkable stuff that's written on those pages, and the simplicity of the universal laws, the real clarity that comes through those universal laws. We're stepping back into the context. Yes, there's still a lot of content that we're going to be looking at, but I invite you, in the face of all that reading and all that confusion and the difficulty of it, to really see that difficulty in the context that we're creating here. Barbara.
Just a quick dumb question. The universal laws that you listed out, what's the source of that? I don't recall seeing, where does that come from?
I don't know, I've seen them
with the 21 laws.
I've seen them in a lot of different places, not compiled into 21 laws, but I've seen universal laws, and we're going to now add in maxims of law, where the common law comes from, and it's not necessarily where it comes from, but I want you to really start comparing in the context of what we're doing here of how it resonates.
Mhm.
How does
I
it
just,
resonate?
so it's that way. It's on different references in that, essentially that form you've got, what the laws are. I just don't know, but I'm just wondering if there's an individual or a certain something associated with those laws, the stating or not. I didn't know, so I wanted to ask.
I'll have to go into my archives and see, because I was just looking at the different references I have for universal laws as I was preparing here, and I've got a huge background of different.
A little bit to do. I know, no, not worry about that. I thought I'd ask when you mentioned this. Oh, let me ask that question.
When we look at the laws, I mean, does that look like it could universally apply? And there are some things that we've stepped away from the universal applications of law. For instance, we see in the universal laws that we tend to see a balance in them. Like, I hadn't thought before I started studying this about the law of gender. We all have a balance of masculine and feminine. I mean, you look at during the time of the World War I, when Rosie the Riveter came in and did all the things that the men that were out to war did. It's like, yes, we have a balance, all male and female. Men will have these events that they nurture, and they become so nurturing and heartfelt. I mean, we all have all of that in us.
Yep.
So I tend to see the universal laws, and you'll see the laws of the maxims of law that we're going to start to introduce as we're kind of looking at different types of law and beginning to build a resonance with the real law.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I think Hermes Trismegistus is where they're from, but I don't know if he channeled them or if he got them from some other source, the 21 Universal Laws. But I really enjoyed the reading. Was it the angelic reading and the visualizations? It was a nice break and breather from other jargon heavy reading, but it was interesting because just in reading it without doing the visualizations, I could feel my frequency change just in reading them. It was so beautiful. So thank you for those.
Yes. Yeah, we really embody, and we know the law when we feel it. We know what's not the law, what really doesn't resonate. Who else? Okay, we'll start looking at then the Convention on the Rights and Duties of States. What do you see in that
Trish,
had
go
any
ahead.
value?
Sorry,
Can
Trish raised her hand.
Oh, okay.
I got my reading done almost like right away. I was behind for so long. I was like, I'm going to get through this stuff. And yes, wow. And I was really, yes, grateful for, those laws. It was like, wow. And the gender one was interesting to me. Kind of a new little twist on that. And had a great week. It was almost like something energetically shifted for me. I've been taking some courses from a phenomenal old time DO osteopath who's on a mission. And I mean, the whole class just shifted, the energy shifted the last day, and he told his story to the whole class. I mean, it was just like he's on it. I'm just like, okay, this is you know, just I mean, he's got a PMA going, you know, I mean, he's moving it. And so I'm really appreciative of it's like this contrast thing where I'm kind of like my heart's going, does this feel right? And he's doing the same thing, kind of is overlapping with what we're doing here. It's funny because it's like, does your heart resonate with this? Is this feeling, you know, like this is really the best way to proceed forward? A lot of personal development. If you're going to keep doing this kind of work, you got to keep doing your personal development. And so, yeah, it just felt like it, yeah, and the angelic beings. I felt like I carried that paper with me every day of the week. It was kind of like something really honed in. And so yeah, I just personal share more than, but yeah, and I really appreciate this group's nice.
It's not just a personal share. If we're all evolving, and the world is evolving as we embrace our true frequency.
I'm so excited to be alive at this time.
Yes.
It's like I'm like, yes, let's get some stuff going here. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, and when we begin to really embody that, it takes, as we're looking at the writing of an affidavit and the affidavit of truth and what that means, when we really start to realize who we really are, articulate it in such a way that the people out there in the war powers, and we're going to see as we work more and more with this affidavit and what's on it, why after the first sentence, after the first paragraph, after we really say who we are, then we give notice to the war powers, to the receiving state. And that notice now says, you have a duty to see me there. You have a duty to see me there because I say who I am. For instance, in a passport application, a lot of people read through it and they really don't understand what they're asking for in a passport application because it says in there, U.S. citizen or national. U.S. citizen or national. And if any other evidence to present with you can present an affidavit. And so we have what's called an affidavit of evidence of citizenship. I'm not a U.S. citizen. I was actually born in a state that is sovereign. So I am a state national. I'm a national that absolutely, you don't need driver's license, you don't need pay taxes, you don't do all those things that U.S. citizens are, because the 14th Amendment said involuntary servitude is prohibited. But what it did is it created, like the front of the hand, stop, involuntary servitude is prohibited. But what it created in it is voluntary servitude. So when we go someplace and we say, and the voter registration is an affidavit that says you're this U.S. citizen of voluntary servitude, and our training is, I pledge allegiance to the flag of that servitude. Again, we're re-examining what questions are we asking? Who did we say we are? Where did we give our consent for that, knowingly or unknowingly? So this really is, it's a lot of reading and a lot of analyzing. We're stepping back now to look at why would we read this? What value does it have? And why are we looking at these particular documents? Selma.
So regarding your comment about the passport. I mean, obviously you're talking about the US passport. I'm just wondering if there's similar wording in any other country's passports, because, yeah.
I
Like
wouldn't
about
doubt it.
citizen versus
I
national.
I wouldn't doubt it. But listen, if you send in an affidavit that says, "I know who I am, and I'm not a I am the emissary of the divine. I am here for that," and you send it, who can say you're not that? And one of the things about the passport is whatever you send in there to the passport office, to the passport authority, that becomes part of the record. You know, they have these little barcodes. You don't even know what it says in there. But if you have an affidavit on file, isn't that what has to be in there?
Interesting.
Your statement of truth, unrebutted. Nobody can say you're not the emissary of the divine. Nobody can say you're here to be in involuntary servitude, subject of the crown.
Okay.
There has to be a way. In law and in medicine, there's always a remedy. Health, law, there's always a remedy. There's always a remedy. Hi, Donna and Eric. Good to see you. Yes. So one of the things let's look at the Convention on the Rights and Duties of States. Why would we put that in there? Why would that be important? We're talking about states. Anybody have a clue of that? The political existence of a state is dependent on recognition by other states. Even before recognition, the state has the right to defend its integrity. Well, what's a state? The first definition of state is a state of mind. The first definition. So if you have this state of mind and through your affidavit you've expressed that state of mind, you have rights and duties and recognition. Recognition. No state has the right to intervene in the internal or external affairs of another. Well, if we have this state of mind and we have basically declared that state of mind, who has the right to intervene or interfere in that statement, in your state of mind? Are you
Marcia,
not a state unto yourself at that point? Yes, Selma.
sorry to interrupt.
Got
Is
a
it
burning
possible
share. No, I know. That's good. I love
is
it.
it possible you're ahead of us? Because, you said something earlier when you came on about, oh, we're in lesson 6, but we're still in lesson 5. So I'm wondering if the comment you're making about state is from one of the lesson 6 documents.
Oh, it might be.
Okay,
I'm,
just checking.
I'm,
I know you're
This
ahead
is
of us.
cohort 5 on the
yes.
this is cohort 5 on the site, which are the
Right.
7 documents we got for that. That's where we're supposed to. I'm a little confused, but some of that's right.
Oh, maybe I confused you.
We
Oh,
should be at number 6. We started, where's today? 28.
No.
No. The first cohort was the second week.
6.
The first one was just the first one.
let me look at my notes.
But it says 1, 2, 3, 4, and if I count, we've had 6
Yeah, I
meetings.
may have jumped ahead. Let me see.
But this is number 6.
This is discussion number 6, but the Convention on Rights and Duties of States, it says on my
I've got
notes.
rights and neutrality is what
Yes.
it says. Cohort
Yeah,
5,
rights
rights
and
and neutrality. That's what we're on now.
Okay, so tell me about the rights of neutrality.
Well, that's what
Why
we're
would
talking about.
Why would we discuss neutrality?
Yeah.
Because
we are neutral.
Because the angel document's part of that.
Are we? Do we, given what we just looked at with the whole sense of confusion and separation, the narrative, are we neutral? Are we neutral? I'm confused about where we are.
Well, I
18 for number seven discussion.
So the material for session 6 was just released today with the class opening up. So we all read session number 5. We read all the material from last week.
5 for us, right?
All right. The laws
Because
of
they're
war.
one ahead. Yeah, you're one ahead on release.
All right.
But that got confused last time, and it hasn't changed. But we were
That's
all
right.
locked in with the right numbers prior to last time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to change my notes here then,
Well,
because
the email
this is what
needs to say a different number. It's one ahead.
We'll get there.
Okay. Yeah, I am confused because I just downloaded these notes from the website, and that it says that what I've just discussed was anyway. Let's go back then and look at it. Initiation, the rights and duties of neutral powers and persons on land, in war on land. Is that one of the things that you looked at?
Yes.
Yes.
So then we're talking about rights and neutral powers.
And why
Okay,
is it only on land? Why is water excluded?
Because the law of the sea is different than the law of the land.
Okay.
The whole thing.
The law, land, air, water are the distinctions of law.
Okay.
The jurisdictions of law. They call it law, but it's land, air, and water.
I did not know that. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, that's how the shipping, that's how they ship us, and the container, right?
You would be putting that together. We're berthing.
Mm-hmm.
And even road means a place where a ship is docked. All of the admiralty terms are really in our life, in our thinking. It's exactly what is the context that we're living in. All of those admiralty.
Yeah.
One time I was thinking, I said, I just can't do any more of this legal reading. I've just got to sit and read something that is more. Let's see. So I picked a biography of a woman named Sacagawea, who accompanied the Lewis and Clark expedition from Washington, D.C. to Washington State. And it's an incredible journey about how, going over the mountains, giving birth in the mountains, and just amazing woman. And then one of the things that it said in there is that there was somebody in the party that kind of sabotaged the party. They designed these boats that were really too heavy for what they were doing, but they went up the navigable waters. Now, so they're on they're bringing the law of the sea. And then what they did when they got to a point where they couldn't navigate on the water anymore, they did what they called portage. Portage meant they carried the boat to the next navigable water. Well, I realized in that reading that what they were doing in the Lewis and Clark expedition is laying the law of the sea from coast to coast.
Wow.
So, it's like, light reading and all these insights. So it's like really these insights start coming from everywhere when you begin to sort this out, when you begin.
All the dots connect, things start clicking in.
Exactly. To pull the clarity out. It's interesting where the really keys come from.
I find it endlessly fascinating because I'll be looking at something that has no basis on anything that we're talking about, maybe, but I'll go like, oh, it hooks up with that, and I'll see those things, so, and I see them all the time.
Beautiful. That's one of my goals here, is that we begin to have new eyes. We begin to hear things differently. We begin to think things differently, because those places we begin to create newly. We begin to drop the perceptions, drop the narrative, drop the indoctrination, and we begin to have a creative moment.
And we anchor everything through what you call love or whatever the source is. It's embodiment. It's in our physical bodies that lock onto the planet. That's how able to do what needs to be done.
That's what we're here for.
Earth needs us. They don't need people dying, everybody dying. You stay in your body, you stay in your power, so to speak.
Yeah.
That's not an accurate phrase. I'm just using it.
No, you're exactly right on, because all of this war powers and all this confusion, all that is designed, like we said before, is designed to put us in despair and hopelessness, and it'll never change. And those kind of things are the messages that we get that we're not really even aware of where they're coming from. Somebody said at one time, I was in a conversation, they said, most people don't realize they've never had an original thought.
Yeah, I was thinking about that before we got on tonight. I'm like, how do we know? How do you know?
Yeah, well, again, my oldest brother would say, instead of a greeting, he'd say, hey, what do you know for sure? So it's like there's this ongoing mantra that he's done with me, and I have to stop and think, well, what do I know for sure? Do I know that for sure? Do I have firsthand knowledge? Again, what is one of the elements of an affidavit? Firsthand
I knew a
knowledge.
Westie street kid in New York. I mean, he said, "What's up with your neck?" That's what he used to say. But God, it was a totally weird off thing, but that was always interesting to me, because it's not what anybody. It's an aberration to some. So I always thought that was pretty powerful.
Who's competent to testify? Who's competent to make a statement on an affidavit? Somebody who has firsthand knowledge. Yes, we're bringing all these forward. We can actually see these. We're reading the documents. We're not reading somebody's opinion about the documents. And there's a lot of that in law. I mean, when you read a court case, what does it say? It starts out first. Here's the opinion. Here's the narrative. Here's what we're going to tell you that it says. What does every piece of news broadcast is somebody's opinion about what happened out there. Every book that's written is an opinion from somebody's point of view. Many of them have no firsthand knowledge. So what we're getting is real with ourselves. What do you know for sure? Are you a firsthand knowledge? What is the place that you have the greatest firsthand knowledge? Who am I? Who am I really? What's my frequency? What do I intend to resonate? In the face of the context. Yes, we're looking at the context, and now is where we're starting to look back. Yes, we've got all of these deep treaties, we've got all this deep reading, we've got the war powers, we've got everything that's out here. We're now bringing in the ideas of the resonance of the universal law. What is basically can't be, it happens everywhere, it's universal. And we're going to start looking at maxims of law that bring that universal into harmony with the law of the planet.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to add those for you this week. Who else? Who else? What are we seeing in this? What are we seeing because we're looking back and forth. The truth will set you free. The truth will set you free. An affidavit of truth can set you free. Why are we using that as a tool? Because it is how we speak to the world of illusion to say our truth. In alchemy, the alchemical principles are really everything comes from everything, nothing. And alchemy is just gathering the evidence for it to be real. That's really what manifestation is. And so when we're looking at that first paragraph, who am I really? Who am I? I write that, who am I really? You're gathering the evidence so the world can see it. The world can recognize you there.
Or in other words, you can't deny it, right? It's like a trump card.
Well,
Sorry for
it's
the
not.
term.
They can deny. They can deny it all they want, but unless they have firsthand knowledge of a way to say you're not that, it's called a rebuttal.
Okay,
Who
so
could
yeah,
rebut
exactly.
it?
I mean, so they can't do that, so therefore they can't. They have to bow to it, so to speak.
Right.
Yeah.
They would tend to argue. What does
That's all
argue
they
do?
do.
What does argument do? Well, when we look at the neutrality, where we're starting to look at neutrality, have you ever argued with somebody or had somebody try to argue with you and all you do is listen and you understand what they're saying and you say, oh, that I really understand. I hear you, but you won't argue back?
Yep.
And you stand in that neutrality and what happens to the argument?
It dies.
It's just like a cloud that gets blown out of place.
You take the
Blown
power
away.
out of it.
Yeah, that's what neutrality does. And when we're going to be looking more at the neutrality and as we're walking in peace. See, one of the things is we think it's a good idea. Well, I'm here for peace. Do you know that being here for peace is a position and it calls up an opposite? So if you're neutral, you're not here for peace, you're not here for war, you're here just to be. Then that neutrality, there's incredible power in it. That's really where your power sits in your own world, in the face of all the confusion. That's the truth. Neutrality.
Reminds me of something. I mean, those of us who are old enough and watched American TV. What was the oh gosh, the guy who did Kung Fu or whatever?
David Carradine.
Yeah, with Grasshopper and stuff. And the whole thing was that you learned that when someone was coming at you, he would just know how to take their energy and not resist it, but to help them continue on their path.
Yeah, you move their energy. You move their
Bruce
energy.
Lee was about.
Exactly. And what did we see in the law of land warfare? Let's look at the law of land warfare, that article. Now, understand that Army Field Manual has been rewritten, and it really is very obtuse, the newer 2016 version. But there's a very important part putting in here where it looks into what is the war powers relationship with neutrals.
Yeah.
What did you see in that part? Did you read that?
I'm trying to recall which of the documents that was.
That was the Army
two
Field.
Of them have it. Yeah.
It's the Army Field Manual, the Law of Land Warfare. Army Field Manual 27-10.
Page 115.
27-10. There's a section in there on the relationship of war powers with neutrals.
Are they the ones that they call belligerents?
Yeah.
Are the neutrals the belligerents?
Neutral,
no, because I was confused.
No.
Unbelligerents.
Okay. Let me see
Non-belligerents.
The belligerents are the one who are at war, and the neutrals are the people just trying to cope with the so-called belligerents or war makers, like going through their territory or whatever, and whether or not they need to help them and all of that.
We've all been declared belligerents.
it was all a little confusing.
Yes, we have. And Trading with the Enemy Act. Have we read the Trading with the Enemy Act?
Yep.
We haven't. So with Trading with the Enemy Act, we see how the
1917 was it?
We were described 1917, and it was then revised in 1933. 1917, it said in there that U.S. citizens, again, let's think, we've got a new distinction here. It's the U.S. citizens who are considered enemies. What if we're a national? Are we a neutral non-belligerent as a national? We're not an enemy of the United States. So U.S. citizens, it said in there, U.S. citizens, it is illegal for U.S. citizens to have business or intercourse with enemies of the United States. Okay, so U.S. citizens were considered enemies of the United States. In 1933, there was an exception, except U.S. citizens. It's illegal to have business or intercourse with enemies of the United States, except U.S. citizens. Well, guess what? How can you have except U.S. citizens if they aren't considered enemies of the United States? An accepted classification. Well, in 1933, when they took the gold standard away from the money, now they said, oh, the citizens of the United States might realize that we took away their current the foundation of and the substance of their money. So now they're enemies of the United States as well. They took that exception out in 1933. So citizens of the United States are now actively enemies of the United States. So what happens when a citizen of the United States goes into the street and protests, or argues in a court, or goes into any belligerent standing? They become a belligerent enemy. So there's now as we're building distinctions, what happens if you're a national? If you have declared yourself, have an affidavit, I'm not a citizen of the United States, I'm a national, and entitled to the protection of war powers. I'm a neutral. So those kind of distinctions are what we're building here. So we begin not only to think of ourselves as telling the truth about who we are as divine beings, but saying it in such a way that we sever ourselves from that enemy political standing. We're getting clearer in the soup of all the confusion about inside that context who we're really resonating ourselves to be, speaking ourselves to be. I just did a event over in San Antonio, and just telling people about, they're doing like we're doing, but ours is a little bit deeper. Our affidavit of public ministry that we're dealing in here, we designed what we call an affidavit of knowingness. They wanted to call it something different. So I explained to them in an electrical circuit, which is what we are. We're seeing we're electrical beings. We're seeing we're resonating. Our frequency goes out into the world, and how we're putting it out there. So as the electrical beings that we are in an electrical circuit, there's a thing in an electrical circuit called a capacitor. Well, a capacitor is a thing that sits in the circuit that the energy comes from the source, and it comes in as positive and negative energy into manifestation. Well, what happens in the gap, if there's air in there, it unites on a one-to-one basis. If there's castor oil in there, the currency goes out 4 times the currency on or if there's a resistor in there, it diminishes the currency that's going out. So when we are the energetic of the planet and we're designing ourselves here, we are that capacitor that takes the energy, positive and negative, and expresses it however we express it. We either diminish it, we enhance it, we leave it in neutral, one-to-one. Who are we in the expression of that source energy? So this is what we're talking about here. This is the context in all the confusion, the positive and negative, all that stuff that's designed to really confuse us from who we are and the transition that we're involved in right now on our planet, in the building of the new earth, in the coming together with this resonance. We are the capacitors. We bring either enhanced source energy or we diminish source energy. So this is also part of the context that we're evolving with here.
Okay.
This is called a pregnant gap, pregnant pause. Yes, Trish.
She's trying to unmute. There she is.
I just wanted to catch castor oil. What did you say about castor oil?
Oh, and in an electric circuit, if they call it a dielectric. You know, you've seen dielectric grease in I don't know if you have, and so it's called a dielectric. The whatever the medium in between the positive and the negative. The castor oil will increase the currency 4 times.
Okay.
I think that's why it's so fundamentally useful as a healing medium. It brings the currency. It increases the currency.
Mm-hmm.
Good to know.
I have a question.
I have one. Oops, sorry. Go ahead.
Shall I go?
Yes, please. Pascal.
Hi, everybody. I have a question regarding one of the statements you made early on this evening about the executive orders in Trump. I am under the belief, and correct me if I'm completely off, that is Trump using executive orders and the powers of war against the old system to turn those powers into correction forces?
It appears that he is, and understand that the use of the executive, the military powers, when there is no viable alternative, is an imperative to hold the balance of the transition that's going on. The military actually has a job to hold the peacekeeping of the planet at a time when there doesn't seem to be any viable civil rule. I mean, we see in the planet that everything has gone into corporations. I see republics and assemblies and people, you know, that are waking up and they're looking for to be a viable option. But in the transition of coming to a viable, peaceful governance, then it's the duty of the military to hold and as peacekeepers. Governance, government, govern, control, ment, mind. Governance is really the self-expression of government, of governance, of authority, of sovereignty.
Like a verb versus a noun.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, and government has its power only because we've been trained to say that it does, to act like it does.
So, speaking of that, like not being a US person, I'm curious, like I don't think I had heard that there was formerly like a Department of War versus Defense until our readings. I think it was during the Abraham Lincoln time or something they referenced that. So does anyone pick up on a significance as to like Trump having changed the name back to Department of War?
I haven't looked at that basically because now that I have my affidavit of public ministry as a declared neutral, I've risen above all of that to the law of nations, which is where we're headed.
Yeah. Good answer.
So I look at that, and just like people say, oh, this law is going to be passed, and this is happening over here, and that's happening over there. I go, oh, very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I just feel to try to avoid all that stuff as much as possible and not watch the news or listen to the news, because to me, it's all that noise we're talking about. It's like, unless something affects me directly or people that I love directly, I feel like, okay, I heard it, let it go.
And also, I want to point out in Canada, because you're saying, well, the laws of Canada and how is that going? Well, what we're doing is and we're going to look at what the Supreme Court says about neutrality and about the law of nations, and how when we literally design ourselves through this affidavit of truth with notice into the war powers, what this Army Field Manual 2710 says is that the war powers have a duty to see that, number one, and number two, they have a duty to provide free passage through occupied territory. I've actually had somebody who took an affidavit that they wrote as this process, and he was flying to the Philippines, and we called TSA and we said, we have a public minister coming. He's going to go to the Philippines. We sent his affidavit of public ministry, and they escorted them around TSA and right to the plane.
Wow.
That's the power that we're engaging here. That to be seen as that neutral with their duty to protect us. That's what the passport even says. And your passport probably says the same thing. I found war powers. You're in an occupied territory. Who occupied your territory? The Queen.
Well, and then reading one of the documents we read for today was about Australia. I forget the fellow's name who'd written, it was in an email, something he was talking about how Australia was occupied territory since, I forget, was it 19, whatever year it was, and how that came about. And because, of course, like Canada and Australia, many other countries were, I mean, not only were they Commonwealth, it made me realize like 110 years later or whatever, like back then, if I looked at the list of countries that were listed in those, like the Hague document and stuff, I mean, Canada's not there, Australia's not there, of course African nations are not there, but you've got little places like Guyana, Luxembourg, like a whole bunch of, like, the world in some areas has changed as far as what are prominent, let's say, now versus then.
They're all colonialized. They're all occupied territories. Any country that doesn't have its indigenous law capabilities is occupied by conquest, by claim, by, I haven't yet seen even the only country I know that really has a declared neutrality, well, the Vatican actually, and Switzerland, who are very connected. So you see in this, and you're going to begin to see that the neutral territories can do business with warring nations and not be considered warring nations. We're going to get into some of the technicalities of that. And we're going to look at, and that's why the rights and duties of neutrals, the rights and duties, what we're doing is full responsibility as well. That's why we bring in and look at the Ho'oponopono, because now with the whole little prayer of the Ho'oponopono, we look out there and say, oh, I see something that that I'm interpreting as less than divine. Oh, sorry, I'm going to return it to the divine. I'm responsible. I'm 100% responsible for my experience here.
Could I add to what Selma said, Marcia?
Yes, please.
Okay, given we're Australia, when I was going through
Hi, Alison.
When I was going through reading that those war powers, what I realized, given the fact that that was in The Hague in 1907, so Australia has a monarchy constitution. We were still under the law of the UK, so we didn't need to attend that. The King did. Elizabeth's father did attend that session. What it really opened my eyes to, that because of what the laws, the articles were, and everyone agreed to it, that what had happened to our Indigenous population from 1907 to date has been in breach of that. I remember when I was at school, there is because there were plenty of reservations. I didn't realize that's what they were when I was going to school. But there was I had an uncle. I'd lived in the Blue Mountains, and I had an uncle in Tamworth. We used to travel up there and go to their farm. And we had to go through an Indigenous reservation called Purfleet, which is still there today. And they were on a reservation. They weren't allowed to leave the reservation. So that would have been in total breach of that Hague Convention. And then you've got
yes, you're right. It's all in breach of the divine law.
It is. And then when the Indigenous children were removed from their homes, they were taken to different states so they couldn't find their way back home. All of that happened between I know it happened before, but given the fact that we had a constitution in 1901, and this Hague Convention is 1907, all of these breaches happened since 1907, right up until the mid-70s.
And they changed their names, and they took the children into institutions, and exactly, and they forbade them to speak their own language.
And Alice, in the same story in Canada, and the church was very involved in that.
Absolutely.
So I'm wondering whether or not, just on that convention alone, because it was a treaty, that there could be some massive uprising in relation to challenging that now, regardless of anything else, regardless of the doctrine of discovery even. The whole point of that is because under that convention, there's at least 60 years of treason and abuse that they would be.
Yes. The exposure of that and the bringing that forward is what I was talking about before, about that how the truth, that false truths are beginning to fail. And as we're beginning to ask new questions, we're beginning to think newly. We're beginning and while all those challenges are happening, and the exposures are happening, the real evolution is happening right here with us. When we know who we are and we bring this forward and we resonate new thinking, new speaking, and new actions into the world, it really does resonate. We are the capacitors. I've been in positions and situations where there's a challenge, and I've presented my affidavit of public ministry. That's all I did, and stayed silent. And the whole frequency and the energy of what was happening around me shifted. Why? Not just because I handed my affidavit of public ministry, but what is the truth of the matter, of the resonance, of the sovereignty, of the jurisdiction that now existed.
And that makes me think of something Trish said earlier in today's call. I forget now how you worded it, Trish, maybe you'll remember, but my personal response to that was I was reflecting, as what do we call it, the quantum observer, Marcia, that like in this lifetime for myself personally, like I can say I've been on a conscious spiritual path for 50 years. Okay. And that's, let's say, universal laws when I first started to study them. And I reflect on how 50 years ago, there'd be very few people I could talk to who would understand when I was speaking about certain things, and doing medical intuitive stuff or other things I was taught to do. And now there's so much happening from, so many different sources. I think Trish was talking about some overlaps. My point is, I feel the collective consciousness is definitely rising. And yes, there's all the wars and issues, but to me, that's all the stuff that has to be cleared. I use the analogy of a glass with a whole bunch of dirt at the bottom of it. And when you start stirring things up, things look worse instead of better. But that's because all that stuff has to come up to the top and be cleared. And so I just feel that all the negativity and issues, like, to me, it's like, yeah, that's okay. These things are just coming up to be cleared, because you can't create the new earth and move on until you clear the old shit, because it has to go and people have to wake up and stop sleepwalking. And so I feel that there's so many people at all different levels, all different ways, each on their own path, waking up and contributing drop by drop to the new collective consciousness and new earth.
It definitely is happening, and definitely is happening. And where the precipitation happens, that begins to see the resonance out there. It's like, I don't remember who said it earlier, that I am starting to see things differently, see things differently. Well, that's the precipitation that's clearing here, and it clears out there. Chikay. Hi, sweetheart.
Hi. My name is pronounced Chikai.
Oh, Chikai. I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Not too
No,
many.
I don't like to mispronounce Chikai.
It's okay.
I do know that.
I'm just wondering, because everything that was said so far, just bunch of people just decided, I'm the king, I'm the queen, I'm the whatever, and then set the rules. And most of us voted. Okay, you're the authority, so I'm going to have to go along with you, what you've decided. But the thing is, we are truly, we're truly sovereign, then we don't have to go along with it. And my question is, the affidavit, the statement of truth, if you truly know who you are, do we even need that? Because that just says I am, let's say, I am the emissary of divine. And if you truly know that, and it's just a statement, why would that statement have more power to them to believe you are emissary of divine? Or do we really, if you truly know that you are divine being that comes from divine, do we even need that? For example, I'm not even understanding why that statement, so-called the statement of truth, why does that have a power? Is it just for them, so that, why do they accept that more than we really saying, I am? But then again,
Go ahead.
yeah, go ahead. Then again, my question is, there are some people who's like, I am, a male. It's like, I'm a Korean female, or I'm a rabbit reincarnated, whatever. There are some people who says kind of crazy stuff. So what would be the difference? I'm not so sure. Except those some crazy people may actually really, really believe that. So why would the affidavit statement of truth has power? At least
it doesn't. It in itself doesn't.
Yeah.
The real resonance of you knowing who you are, and it's what they call the manifesting it for recognition. And yes, you can do that energetically. You probably have had that, where people energetically know that you carry the law, and there's a resonance around you. And some people will say, "Oh, do you have any identification?" And you say, "Oh, yes, I do." And you hand them that, and they recognize through the tool that you have. when when your resonance follows with it. It's just like my passport. If I have a passport and it says I'm a national, I'm not an enemy of the United States, it gets recognition. So it's a tool for those people who can't necessarily initially feel the resonance as we're building the evolution of a planet that resonates and feels resonance.
Right. That's interesting because I know a lot of stories or I mean real true thing. You sometimes feel it from certain people. Can't even go to that person and speak informally. It's not because that they have, presidency or king or queen. It's just that the vibrations that they carry, you just immediately feel it and respect it, and then don't even, you know what I mean? And
Oh,
also,
yes.
I've heard the story that some during the war, some nuns or whatever just walked through, who really knew they were emissary of divine, walked through and did not get hurt. There are many, many stories like that that I've heard. And also in my life too, I have some experiences that just walking through the government office without anybody stopping me or things like that, when I know that I am doing some spiritual work here. And so
Precisely.
there are so many things that are so interesting, but I just wanted to ask you about that affidavit, but I understand it's
It's a
it's a
tool.
tool. Yeah.
It's just a tool, like a passport would be a tool for somebody who has a duty to see you, and they have this kind of idea what that duty looks like.
Mhm.
And we see on this affidavit, and as we work through it, what the notice on there, it reminds them of their duty to see you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Chicago. Allison? You're muted, honey.
I just wanted to add to that again what's happened since from the divine is that we've had the banking cabal that's come in and said that we were somebody else. And so the people that we're dealing with today, even though they may or may not know everything, it's the reason that they're actually wanting or having problems, and you have to identify yourself, is because of all of the contracts that you would have signed since the time you were born right up until today, saying that you are a citizen and agreeing with them and that they are the authority over you. So doing, I guess, really understanding how the content of the affidavit. I mean, there's a lot of people when you say, know who you are. And most people, if you actually asked out in the street, they say, well, I know who I am. My name's so-and-so, and I've got a job and I've got a family. I know exactly who I am. But that isn't really what we're talking about at that level. We're talking about understanding whether at different levels of consciousness. And the point is that we're dealing with people who aren't educated to understand that. So I believe the ministry, the affidavit, should be quite critical to complete and carry with you. That's something that you do, Marcia. So I'm actually really keen to understand more, because if you have a look now, there is absolutely nothing you own that is in your birth name that your parents gave you. In Australia, when we go to buy property, who's registered on the property is our name, but it's in all capital letters, which is the entity the state created with our birth certificate since 1966 in Australia. US, it's earlier. When we buy a car, what's on the registration papers, it says the registered operator, not the owner. and it's your name in all capital letters, not the name that your parents gave you at birth. So all our lives we've been saying we're someone else. And so that's what they've been educated to recognize us as. So
yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. That's the perception, the belief system that we've been indoctrinated in that's starting to collapse and break down here. Exactly.
Another question.
Yes.
What is the relationship between the claim of life to the affidavit? In other words, how do they compare? The claim of life in German means Mensch instead of Person, which means you're not you're a human being. You're not a juristic person. How do you call that? Like a judicial person. How does that compare to the affidavit? Does that have also a role in this? It should actually, or is the affidavit just overrides that?
No, it doesn't. It's not overriding. It's a different quality, I would have to call it. The claim of life. See, one of the things in that law of the sea that we've been immersed in is that as the birth certificate is issued and then the state becomes your parent, because the birth certificate and the hospitals are what they're called foundling institutions. So a foundling institution is where a mother comes to abandon their child because they want the state to be responsible. So in the foundling institution and the birth certificate, it's considered that the state is the parent of the child. Mm-hmm. But the child has an opportunity when they come of age to say, I'm alive, I'll administer my own estate. But we're not trained to even know that we're in admiralty and that we can claim that estate. So when you come in with a claim of life, because after 7 years, when you come of age and you don't come to claim that estate for the abandoned child and administer it yourself, after 7 years, you're considered lost at sea. So when you come in with a claim of life, you say, oh, here I am, I'm alive, I'm claiming my estate. So that's what you do with that. Here, what we're doing is we're saying, I am the expression. Father sent me to be his mouthpiece and his energy here. That's different than just claiming that I'm alive.
Got it. Thanks.
Who else? Anybody else before we look at what we're going to do next week? Convention on the Rights and Duties of States, the ordinance for the government of the territory of the United States northwest of the River Ohio. That's otherwise called the Northwest Ordinance. The Vienna Convention on the Laws of Treaties, the United Nations Conference on the Laws of Treaties and Documents. So we're going to be looking again at treaties and where do they go and why do we have treaties on, and why would we even think about putting that onto our affidavit? Go away. No, wait a minute. And I'm going to be adding you might want to write this down, because as you're reading this week, and singing your etude, I want you to take those universal laws, and inside what you're reading and what you're doing, as you're observing yourself and as you're observing this process, I want you to try to disprove the universal law. Try to say this universal law doesn't exist here or it doesn't exist there. And these particular ones, universal law number 5, which is the law of resistance. Number 9, the law of action. Number 12, the law of initiation. And number 17, the law of evolution. And I'm going to send Louis some maxims of law for you to look at. Because we're now looking at the universal law, we're looking at maxims of law, which form the basis of the common law, and how that compares with these treaties and how it all mixes in with what we see as the corporate or the law of the sea. And so we're beginning to look more at the context of the law that we're in and be clear and clarify the confusion that we've been designed with. How's that sound? Not quite so much reading this week, but
did you say 5, 9, 12, and 17? Was there another one that you said?
No, 5, 9, 12, and 17.
Okay.
Just kind of live into those laws and feel, yes, the law of resistance,
initiation, action, and evolution.
Action, initiation, and evolution. Yes, we're evolving, and the planet is evolving right along with us. Any last burning share?
I have a comment talking about the claim of life thing, which I've looked into that too, but it's kind of the difference. Like you said, that addresses that shipping, the seas, all of that. The difference, as opposed to what we're doing, is making the connection to the divine. That one doesn't necessarily do that. I suppose it could tacitly.
It just says, I'm alive, I'm not lost at sea.
Right. So it's part of the step, right? So it's
a step in that direction, yes.
Yeah, I know, but what we're doing has that clear connection with divine, with the all.
Exactly. As a resonance, not just a claim.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that it's all about that. It's us in the world looking at somebody in the eye. The light,
yes.
we're transmutating.
Exactly.
It's a different word, but transmutation is really, I think, closer to that. And then I have a lot of reasons for thinking that. But anyway, It's very beautiful. I feel when I say that, I'm resonating in my heart. When I use that language, it resonates. So that's why I choose that. That's why that came out.
Beautiful. Beautiful. All right, my friends. Thank you so much for this discussion. It's so exciting for me to be here.
Thank you.
Glad you made it back.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you, Marcia. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.